New private lenders really like to make things complicated. Part of it is not that they are making it complicated, it may be the spaces that they're in. They may be in a certain association or a group, and the way that they're talking about private lending just seems so big and intimidating. And they're talking about deal sizes that have nothing to do with what we're doing right now, right? They may be like, yeah, I just funded this loan for $3 million, and like we're over here talking about $20,000 loans, and they just may be like, whoa, how do I get to that stage? And so that can really be intimidating and make things get really complicated really quickly. However, simple deals often perform better, right? When you are new to this space, you do not want complexity, okay? If the transaction seems too complex, we don't want it. If the borrower's setup or their process seems too complex, we don't want that. We also don't want you setting up a complex business structure or system for yourself, right? If you're very new to this, just keep it simple, okay? That simplicity is going to create clarity for you and comfort and make it easy to scale, all right? So, the couple of things that we're going to cover today are how complexity actually increases risk in private money lending, why simple structures are better and are easier for you when you're growing your business, and then why, as a beginner, it's in your best interest to keep it simple. Okay, first things first, the more complex a transaction is, the more difficult it's going to be. Okay. If you're new to this space, you want things that you can understand. You shouldn't have to be on every transaction doing a bunch of research to figure out what people are talking about. Okay. And you also, I would suggest not lending in a space you do not understand, right? And a lot of times things seem complex because you don't understand. So, for instance, let's say that I'm interested in podiatry space, but I have no experience in that space, right? And I'm thinking of doing a loan to a podiatrist for their medical practice. I don't even know where to start, okay? And so everything they say to me is probably going to sound complicated because I'm going to be like, what? Like, I don't know what you're saying. Like, the words, the vocabulary doesn't even make sense to me, okay? Now, that's because I'm out of my element, okay? I'm not in that space. I have no medical training, no medical background. So I'm literally out of my element. It's too complex. Now, if I'm looking at an industry I'm familiar with, like real estate or even like coaching and consulting businesses, like I am familiar with those models and how they work. I understand the terminology. So when I'm having a conversation with the borrower about their business, about projections, about their process, I'm not confused, okay? And if I am confused, it's probably because they have set up a complex structure that doesn't fit my lending model, right? And when I say complex structure, I'm talking about they've got a holding company that has 10 LLCs, and some of them are in trusts, and they got an offshore account, and they want the loan to go to this sister company because this one's going to secure it and all this. Like, no, okay? Too complicated, right? For a beginner private money lender. We're not doing that, okay? So we want simplicity, right? Because the more convoluted and complex it gets, the more risk we're dealing with here, right? Because our understanding is going down, there's more things to keep track of, there's more paperwork involved, and we just don't want any of that, especially at the beginning stages. The second thing here is that simple structures just scale better, in my opinion. Now, when I say simple structures, I'm talking about like a fix and flipper who, maybe they have an LLC and it's a single member LLC owned by an individual, and they use that LLC to do their fix and flips. Okay. Now, the LLC owns the property and the LLC sells the property, in and out, simple, not too complicated. The LLC isn't owned by a dynasty trust and you got to go through this and get so and so to sign this. And like, no, okay, too complicated. Simple structures. And now, if that borrower is operating in that same way, like let's say they even make a new LLC with each flip, great, that's fine, okay? As long as the LLC is owned by a single entity or some kind of entity that I can understand, right? Like something I'm familiar with. It could be an individual, two individuals, whatever. It can be owned by an entity. I mean, that's not the preference, but just keeping it as simple as possible. The more layers you add, the more complicated it's going to be, the longer your due diligence is going to take, and the more stressed you're going to be, to be honest, especially in the beginning stages, because you just started learning this information and now you're in implementation phase. It needs to be simple. Okay. The third thing is it's in a beginner's best interest to keep it simple, because that's how you're going to build up your reps and your confidence and reduce your stress. Okay. And you may decide that even though in the beginning you're doing only simple deals and you eventually want to get more complex, that's fine. But in the beginning, you want to do something simple because you're never going to get past that first fear and that initial beginner threshold until you do something. But if everything looks so complicated and out of your wheelhouse, you're never going to make a step. You're never going to make that first loan. So if you receive an opportunity and it just seems too complicated, or maybe you're having a conversation with the borrower and things just seem really convoluted and it's not really making sense, just pass on that. But take note of what specifically was complicated and what did not make sense to you. Okay. This is going to be helpful for you as you reflect on the end of the year about the types of deals that were coming your way, what you passed on and what you accepted, and what you had questions about. And that's going to help increase your learning and your confidence. So, this is the short of why simple wins every single day. I mean, I've been doing this for years and I still prefer simple loans. I do not want anything too complicated. I like being able to just repeat my same process over and over and over again, because the more I do it, the easier it is, the less I have to think about, and the more passive this is. And that's the whole point, right? Like, I wanted to do something more passive than real estate, and so if it's becoming too involved, then it's getting out of my wheelhouse, right? It's getting out of my lending box, out of my preference. And so keeping it calm and lending on is what I'm always going to be a fan of.